Hey everyone, today we're talking about Tor browser and why I think it should be shut down or at least undergo a massive change in structure. This video was supposed to play, so I'll just play it now real fast. Okay, doesn't matter. This is aesthetic purposes. Okay, moving on. So, the Tor browser. The Tor browser. Tor is spelled T-O-R as you can see here, and it stands for the Onion Router. And the onion represents the several different relays or layers that the browser uses to send your information across until it gets to your destination. Now, if you don't know how Tor browsers work, or you just never heard of Tor browsers, hopefully the next slide will help you better grasp the concept of how they work. So let's say we're Alice, and Alice wants to go to YouTube, or we want to go to YouTube. On a normal browser like Safari or Google, it'll take you straight to your destination, YouTube. But on a Tor browser, it'll take you through several different computers and several random places across the world before reaching your destination. So, for example, we'll start off in computer A in London, then computer B in France, then computer C in Canada, and then from this computer to your destination. You also got to realize that, or it's important to note that the computer sequence is always randomized. So in this example, it wouldn't always be the same three computers. Next time it could be computer B to computer D to computer E to computer F to then your destination. And then all this plus the fact that it's encrypted, your information is being encrypted, it's basically almost impossible to trace any users of a Tor browser. So, I mean, that's pretty cool, right? You can use it to avoid getting information hacked or getting spied on, anything like that. You don't have to worry about the FBI man looking over your shoulder like this guy over here watching your videos or what you're watching, what you're downloading, what you're playing, what you're writing your emails, all that stuff we don't like. We don't like the FBI man, not really. And that's what it was really intended for. It was intended for good uses, for I guess wholesome uses. It was intended for our right to privacy, our right to browse without prying eyes looking at what we're doing, and basically just to keep anonymous over the web, so no one knows what we're doing. And that's where it kind of gets a little tricky, and evils start like coming in, and we'll talk about those evils later. But first, we'll talk about someone very important in the Tor project. If you need to put a face on the Tor project, or let's just call this guy our ethical actor here, I guess, him and the Tor project. This is Andrew Lumen, and he is the former executive director and co-founder of the Tor project, and he basically turned it from a U.S. government program into an open source program that anyone watching this video could use if they really wanted to. So if you need to put a face on a Tor browser, you got this guy right here. So let's talk about ethics now. We got two very famous ethical standards here. We got utilitarianism, and we got ethical Immanuel Kant and his ethics. So the first one being utilitarianism. Pretty hard word to say, honestly, but that's not what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about what it's about. And basically, the main point of it that it's trying to get across is that actions are either good or bad depending on the outcome of those actions. And the purpose of this standard was that to make life better by increasing the good and happiness in the world and decreasing the bad and pain in the world. Moving on to Immanuel Kant standards. Immanuel Kant is probably the most known and significant and discussed moral philosopher in history, and he believes in limited government and maximum freedom, which is pretty similar to what the Tor project was trying to accomplish. Maximize freedom on the internet, and that included limiting government eyes over what people were doing. And what Kant basically preached was it's not enough to be happy, but to be worthy of the happiness. And he also describes that you can't trample on the freedoms of one to help others. For example, it would be wrong to kill one person to save, let's say, 5 other people. So let's keep these two standards in mind as we progress through this video. We got one more to go through. This one coming from the ACM. ACM being the Association of Computing Machinery. If you're wondering who they are, you might have heard of them, but if you're wondering who they are, they're the biggest scientific and education society in the world dealing with computing technology. And they have a very well thought out, thorough set of guidelines that people should use to follow when creating software or hardware. And if you follow their guidelines, your consumers or whoever uses their product or program could end up like this guy right here, satisfied, happy, thumbs up right there. So that's why they're a very good or very famous or important source of ethical standards when it comes to technology. And one of their ethical standards is to avoid harm, whether it be unintended or unjustified. If you're going to cause harm to your product, then it has to be justified harm. And if you do cause unintended harm, then it's your duty or obligation as the creator of that product to undo or stop further harm from happening. So let's also keep this one in mind. It's a very important one also when progressing through this video. So as we were saying, the evils of the Tor browser. Tor browser has become saturated with criminal activities. A big example is uh, just criminal websites, obviously, like Silk Road. Silk Road, if you haven't heard of it, was a $1.2 billion worth website where people would sell their criminal services, like drug trafficking, right here, as you can see here. Weapon trafficking gets worse, don't worry. Human trafficking, and then finally, one of the worst things ever, child pornography. Wow. So, keeping this in mind, and obviously there's probably way more stuff also, like hitman services, and you might be thinking, well, it's probably not all like this, or most of it isn't like this, and it's definitely hard to argue whether most of it is criminal enterprise websites. It's so many websites out on the internet today, it'll be impossible to tell how many are good or bad. But some researchers over at King's College have managed to find and classify the content of over 2,000 live websites on Tor. And out of those 2,000 sites, they found over 1,500 contained illegal material or illicit material, meaning, stuff like these four things are beyond the scope of this. So it's definitely something to consider, that something that was meant to be so wholesome, or something that was meant to keep people safe over the internet, has caused so much harm. And that brings us back to our guidelines or our ethical standards. So comparing this to utilitarianism, see I messed it up there again. Andrew Lumen and the developers at the Tor project and the action of them creating the Tor browser, it might have started with increasing the good and happiness in the world, but it ended up definitely increasing the bad and pain in the world. As you can see, drugs here definitely ruin lives, weapons ruin lives, human trafficking ruins lives, child pornography ruins lives, and then so on, so on, so on. It's non-stop, it keeps going. It might never stop at this rate because the internet expands at an exponential rate. So even if all the law agencies in the world got together, try to stop this from happening, it's probably still wouldn't be enough. They would never have the resources to even come close to shutting down all these terrible websites. And keeping in mind the same people, keeping in mind the Tor browser developers and the action of them creating the Tor browser, they're also going against what Emmanuel Kant preached in his standards of trampling on the freedoms of one to help others. Right here, you can see they're trampling on the freedoms of, I guess you consider them the few, the ones being abused in these pictures. And then the most would be the people who are, remaining anonymous, a lot of them being criminals. You know, just to create a sort of anonymous atmosphere in the web. So they definitely went against that standard. They're also, not maximizing freedom at all with what is happening on their browser. And finally, we'll talk about the ACM ethical standard to avoid harm. As you can see, this is all unintended harm. I'm not holding against, the developers and saying it's, 100% their fault. Obviously not. There's terrible people in the world. Nothing will probably ever stop that. But it's definitely, their job to stop this from keep happening. Google has something similar. If you don't know what the dark web is, it's basically websites you can't access through normal, search engines like Google, because they hide, I guess you could say, these websites through some algorithm they use. I'm not gonna expand on that because it's not really that relevant. But they could implement, something similar on their browser or anything like that. It would definitely, I think it would definitely help. Or if anything, if worst comes to worst, try to shut it all down if that helps matters. So yeah, thank you for watching my video. This is why I believe Tor browser should be shut down, or maybe some major changes should come about. Thank you.